Good evening, Booktopians, and please give a warm welcome to, there he is, chef, Masterchef judge, and author, Jock Zonfrillo. Hello, Jock. Welcome to Booktopia.
Hi, mate. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
So we'll give people a moment to join the stream, and while we do, I'll just go through some formalities. Acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pay respects to elders past and present. And I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people watching. We'll be live with Jock for the next half hour or so, talking about his brand new book, Last Shot, which you can place an order for right now at booktopia.com.au. You seem to have momentarily lost him, but the link is right here in the description of the event. And we do have some signed copies left. So Jock did recently sign a bunch of copies for us that have been shipped to the Booktopia warehouse. And if you are watching this tonight, we still have some available. If you're watching this at a later date, you may not be able to get one, but it will be definitely signposted on the product page that there are signed copies available if we do still have some. So if you're watching this tonight, August the 5th at 7 p.m., we do still have signed copies available. And please ask Jock questions in the comments. Looks like he's back. There he is. Yep.
Technology.
I know. You sneeze, you push the wrong button, and it all goes haywire. So yeah, if you have questions for Jock, please ask them in the comments. Just drop them in the comments below, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can throughout this throughout the conversation. So let's get started. Jock, your story begins in a rough place, 90s Glasgow, and then finds you here now as role model, renowned chef, and judge on TV's Masterchef. Could you summarize kind of what you think of the journey that you've been on? I know you've summarized it in the book, but if there's a guiding thought that you have for it, perhaps.
Look, I really think it's a roller coaster, my story, and I'm only halfway through my life, or I hope I'm only halfway through my life anyway. And you know, there's been super high points, super low points, and for me, it's like, you know, I think I appreciate my life more today, having gone through some of the struggles, and you know, I think you hear that with people that have had a tough time. You know, like I remember my nonna always used to tell me, it's like, you know, you're better off having people in your life that have been through the rumbler. That's what he used to say. Like, if you've gone through a hard time, you generally you're a bit more prepared, you're a bit more sort of adventurous, and you can appreciate the now, if you like, if you've had some struggles in your life. But you know, that said, I find myself in Australia. I turned 45 yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And you know, I've got an amazing family and an amazing life, and I just can't complain, you know. And so I look at some of the troubled times and the struggles and whatever, and I'm just like, yeah, you know, it formed who you are, those, you know, the formative years, I guess. But I don't think I would change it. Somebody asked me today if I had a time machine where to go backwards or forwards. You know, you could do anything in a time machine. You could, you know, go forwards in the future, or you could go back and change stuff. And I said forwards. I've got no interest in going back, and you know, I did a lot of stuff I'm ashamed of, embarrassed of, and all the rest of it. But I don't think I've got any need within me to go back and try and fix it, or, you know, have a do-over. You know, I'm much more focused in the future and how good that's bound to be, you know.
What inspired you to put pen to paper and write your story, and why was now the time for you to do it?
Look, I think there was so many little bits of my story out there in interviews and magazines and newspapers and all the rest of it, and they were just so, to me anyway, they seemed very out of context. And I would meet people and go, oh, I read an article about you when you did this, that, or the other, you know, and that was all they thought of me, was just they'd read, you know, 300, 400 words, and that was it. And I think now, being on MasterChef, you're forced to have this growth in your profile publicly, and everybody wants to know, you know, about you and where you came from, and all the little bits and the secrets and the behind the scenes and this, that, and the other. And so it seemed to me to be a good idea to, you know, put everything in one place, so as somebody could read a lot about me and it would be in context, you know, like all the good bits and all the bad bits and the sad bits and the happy bits. And, you know, and to me, yeah, being on MasterChef and having a much bigger public profile, it felt like the right time to do it.
We've got a lot of people in the comments wishing you a happy birthday.
Thank you, everybody.
And a question that I'm sure several people have is from Cosima. She asks, what sort of birthday cake did you have?
Carrot cake. I got 2 of them. I have a mate, Matthew Jansen. His wife, Gabby, made me a carrot cake. If you're listening, Gabby, thank you very much. You're a gem. The carrot cake was delicious. And my darling wife also made a trip to a bakery to buy a carrot cake. God bless her. You didn't have time to make it, did you? You would have if you had time.
Yeah.
It was from Beatrice. If anyone's a fan of cakes in Melbourne, Beatrice is a smashing patisserie bakery, and their carrot cake is delicious. The icing was fantastic. But carrot cake's one of my favorites. Love it.
Nice. So you're definitely on the it is a cake and not a cake kind of side of the carrot cake argument.
Yeah, look, you know, banana loaf, banana bread, I think is a better argument. Like carrot cake, it's kind of in the name, isn't it? Really, you know, it's definitely a cake.
Fair enough.
Yeah, carrot bread. I don't know if you put it in a loaf tin, would it be a bread then? No, I think it's still a cake, just shaped like a bread, pretending to be bread.
Look, I'm not saying that we just came up with a challenge for the next season of MasterChef. I'm not saying that.
There might be something in that. You never know.
Definitely. So, as you mentioned before, your memoir has a lot of struggle in it, and something that everybody has to go through when they write memoir is to go back and dredge up these kind of difficult experiences from their past and re-examine them. But that's probably doubly hard for you as a former addict, having to go back and kind of write about what it was like to experience kind of those drug experiences that you had. Was that a really difficult experience for you?
I think it was difficult not slipping into writing about just drugs and taking drugs and what it feels like and the people you hang around with and all the bad shit about that lifestyle. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, I wanted to be mindful that this was a memoir and I wanted it to be reflective and honest and of the good bits and the bad bits, but at the same time, I didn't want it just to be a memoir about taking drugs and what, you know, all the bits about that. So I found it difficult to edit down the book. Like, I think the first draft of my memoir was like an encyclopedia. Seriously, it would have been like 2,000 pages, I reckon. And it was just too much. There was too much information. There was too many stories. And so we had to sort of sit down and it was brilliant working with Simon Schuster to help me kind of, you know, pick through the relevant stuff. And also, you know, as you're saying, like a lot of people sort of, it's tough dredging, right? Like for me, it was like, I'm just going to get it all out there and then I'll pick through it. Do you know what I mean? And work out, like, I didn't want to hold anything back, I think is what I'm saying. And so dredging through it, it was my life anyway, and for me to put it down on paper, I've told so many bits of it anyway. I didn't really mind that part of it. I found some of it confronting in the aspect of, you know, I've got some shame and regret, and you know, like I feel bad about, you know, some of the broken relationships and stuff like that. That was really hard. I think to be sort of to be honest and vulnerable enough to write all that stuff down and pretend that you don't care what people think of you. Do you know what I mean? I think there's something in everybody that wants to be accepted and loved, and you know what I mean? And there's a chance that people know Jock from Masterchef and think, oh, he's a really nice guy and he wears a three-piece suit, and like, yeah, it's like real nice. And they read the book and he's like, oh my God, he was a junkie. You know, like there's always a part of me when I was writing the book that was thinking, what are people going to think of me as this person, you know what I mean? Or a bad father or a bad husband or a whatever, you know? And I think being vulnerable enough just to write it all down, for better, for worse, and just put it out there. I think that was the struggly bit, I think, for me. I think a lot of people ask you and they go, was it cathartic writing a book? Definitely not. It was, you got to go back and face some of the unsavory bits of your life. And often that's not nice,
Working in the high intensity environment of a kitchen, like the way you describe your early experiences doing that in the 90s in Scotland, it sounds quite terrifying. You have these people up in your face yelling at you, swearing at you, throwing, boiling hot pots and pans at you. And you were like 12, 13, 14 when you were having these experiences. Do you think that the kitchen culture that you experienced was very much kind of located in a time and a place? Have things changed? And do you think that turning to drugs as a release was part of that culture? I'm sorry if I packed like 6 questions.
Working backwards, taking drugs was definitely a part of that, because I think we all experienced an abusive environment on the daily that we wanted to escape from. And drugs was the quickest way to do that, And so, part of falling into that circle of drug use was due to that, for sure. Another part of it was your social circle and the people you hang around with. But, when you're, and we didn't, the thing is, back then in the 90s, it was definitely a time, and in answer to your first question, part of that is, kitchens aren't like that anymore, thank God. It was illegal back then, and it's, I think thankfully people are a lot more, aware of it these days, that it's just not right, Back then, being a chef wasn't a renowned job, or if you were a chef, it meant like people around you were like, oh, you didn't get on well at school, or you know what I mean, or you. Like it wasn't a proper job almost. I think when I told my parents the first time, it was like they were just thinking, like, well, that isn't a job, and when I was at school, there was no such thing as being a chef, really. Like the only thing that you had anything to do with cooking at school was a subject called home economics, where you made fucking scones and learned how to iron shirts. You know what I mean? Like it was all rolled into one, And I think for us being in kitchens, we didn't know, and I certainly didn't know as an apprentice, that environment and the bullying and the yelling and the screaming and the hours you worked, I didn't know that wasn't normal, because I was so young and there was no one around me to tell me that it wasn't normal either. Do you know what I mean? It was just, that's the way it was. That was what you got given. And so you'd go in every day, you do the long hours, you take the abuse, and you would have your career in mind, that you were focused on learning how to cook, of which there's so much to learn, you could never know it all. But then also you were just, as a career focused, like back then, I know it's different these days, but back then you picked a career and that was all you were going to do for the rest of your life. Whereas now, as I've got a 20-year-old who's talking about having 3-4 careers in a lifetime. It wasn't like that back then. You picked a career and that was it for your life. And so it almost felt like there was no way out. You just had to accept what was happening. And so we didn't really think about it. And when I was writing the book, and and people around me started reading it, and they were going, oh my God, like, apart from the fact that is ridiculous environment to work in and so crazy, it's just that's not normal. But you get so used to it being your normal, I'd never thought about it anymore, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? It's a weird, what's that, is it Stockholm syndrome?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it was like, like you kind of relished it. You kind of wore that as a badge of honor almost. The harder you worked, the better chef you were, type thing. The more abuse you could flack in one day, the better you were. I mean, it was ridiculous. But, it's just the way it was,
Yeah, it's kind of incredible reading the book how high functioning you were through that period.
Yeah, I taken a lot of drugs. Heroin aside, I think being a junkie was the baseline. And then we would all go out to clubs. We would hammer pills and cocaine and speed and all the prescription drugs as well, all the benzos and the temazepams and the mogadons, and it was relentless. That was a lifestyle. It was just it was a way of life. But at the same time, we all pitched up to work on time the next morning, and we were all razor sharp, and we all did our job, to a standard that was so high. And whether that was in the 5 Red Star Hotel when I was an apprentice, or whether it was a 3 Michelin star restaurant, we all made sure we were there and pitched up to work every day. So you could probably group us all into that category of high functioning addicts at the end of the day. But, at the end of the day, we were all, very career focused. And you find that in chefs that are working at that level of restaurant. It really only attracts people that are intensely focused on their career and really want to cook and be the best.
I want to read you a comment that we've just received from Rachel Whitelaw. She says, "My partner is a chef. He's having a rough trot. He's resonating with your book. Thank you for your openness. So important, particularly for men."
Thank you, Rachel. We've had so many amazing, beautiful messages. The book's only been in sale for 4 or 5 days. And I've had some of the most beautiful messages from people who the partners are struggling, whether it was with addiction or someone like that, his partner is a chef and they're just at the wit's end, not knowing. And especially now with COVID, these are tough times when, Melbourne this afternoon, lockdown again, restaurants have to close. They got to, all of a sudden restaurants are having to pivot into the best they can to keep staff employed. And I can only imagine what it's like for young chefs working in the industry with this open, close. They're not getting a stable learning environment. They're not getting job security. They're not getting anything. And I worry about the industry in that regard. So it's a tough time. So Rachel, stick by your partner and try and be as understanding as you can, because it's an industry full of uncertainty at the minute.
So I'll grab a couple more questions from the comments as well. What is one misconception people have about working in a professional kitchen?
I don't know. What is a misconception? What do you think? What do people think of chefs working in kitchens? Yeah, a lot of people, I suppose, think it's violent and bossy and argumentative and all the rest of it. I think it's a lot of kitchens these days, like almost run in silence. That you don't. I mean, if I think back to Arana, we'd barely say a word to each other unless it was, 2 minutes, 1 minute, those sort of time calls or stuff like that. Kitchens these days are very different than what you'll read in my book, obviously. But I think for a restaurant, I think people look at restaurateurs. There's a misconception, and they think that restaurateurs are loaded because there's customers rolling in the door and people pay lots of money to eat there. But actually, the cost of running a restaurant and keeping your staff employed and food and wastage and all the other things that go on top of it, people cancelling dinners when it rains, through to no-shows, through to just general food wastage for whatever reason. Restaurants are one of the most expensive things. And believe me when I tell you, restaurateurs are not rich people. They do it because they've got a love of hospitality. And that's what keeps them doing it. It's definitely not for the money.
We've got a question in here from Rebecca. She says she's doing a talk about her childhood and growing up with having Asperger's and being bullied. And she finds that as she's working on it, she's having to deal with a lot of feelings that are coming up. She wants to know how you dealt with those feelings when you were writing about your childhood.
I suffer a bit. I get anxious. And so when I was digging up memories, particularly about lots of different stuff, whether it was recent things like, a bit of online trolling, and some of the harder parts that you read about in the book, which was only a matter of, months or a year ago. I have worry beads, which everybody would have seen me have, and Masterchef. And I'll sit there and just take a moment and just try and calm my mind. And because you have to look at that trolling, bullying, all those thoughts that surround that are all just noise. It's just noise, and it's noise in your head, and it's not real in a way. It's real, but it's not real to whatever it is you're doing at that moment. And if you're trying to do, write a speech or a talk or a book or an essay or whatever it might be, what you need to worry about is what you want to say now. And so all of those other things that you think other people are thinking or talking about or saying or whatever, that is just not, it's white noise, and you need to calm it out. So the quicker you get it out of your brain, the better. And for some people, it might be worry beads, it might be you might need to go and take a walk for 10 minutes and then come back down and sit fresh. It depends what kind of person you are. For me, the worry beads, I can flick my mind back to a clear space within minutes just by flicking through the beads, and it'll just, and I use it when I'm on set in Masterchef, because in my head, sometimes all I'm thinking about is that there are 100 people on set in the Masterchef set. And in my head, everybody is waiting for me to stuff up. That's all that I'm thinking about. There are 100 people staring at me, waiting for me to stuff up. So when I take the spot at the top of the room, in my head, everybody's staring at me, waiting for me to say the wrong thing. You know what I mean? Or forget my lines or whatever, And that's why I've got the worry beads, because within a few seconds, I can actually rationalize the moment and the situation and just move on.
Now, we've spoken a bit about how in Last Shot, you talk about chefs dealing with their downtime and the way that they blow off steam in certain ways, but you also have a little bit about kind of the food that they eat. You described Marco Pierre White eating peanut butter from a jar with his fingers at one point. What are the eating habits of renowned chefs, and would they shock people?
I think there's a couple of extremes. I think chefs to a point largely are gluttons. So we want to experience, if we're going to a friend's restaurant, for example, we would want to experience pretty much everything on the menu. And so in that form, it's kind of gluttonous. In another way, we are all lovers of junk food, because we are in search of deliciousness as chefs inherently. And deliciousness comes, as you know, in junk food in leaps and bounds, because it's full of sugar and salt and umami bombs that are, it's manufactured to be that way, to make you addicted to it and come back for more. And so after work, you're looking for something that's quick and easy and delicious and generally fried. And so we constantly have these go-tos of junk food as chefs. But then there are periods in our lives as chefs, and I've seen it in a lot of, I haven't gone down this path, but for many people around me and great chefs, some of the world's best chefs, I've seen them go on a health kick, and all of a sudden they're eating nothing but broccoli and green beans for a month and salad leaves. And it's like, I can't do that. I just can't do it. I've got this weird metabolism where I can eat anything in large volumes, and I don't put any weight on, and I've never exercised in my life. I've never been to a gym. And so my wife constantly says to me, you deserve to be fat. And I believe I do. I understand that. And I don't care. I'm quite happy to keep eating the fried chicken, to be honest.
We've got a question in the comments from Sharon Moran. She asks, do you plan on opening another restaurant when COVID settles down?
Look, I don't know when that's going to be. I don't think anyone can answer that question yet. I know certainly Arana was a restaurant that, was born around giving acknowledgement to Indigenous people through food, right, and their culture. And so that was the reason I did it. And I kind of felt like, by the time we closed it, it'd been 7 years. And to me, I felt like it had done its job. It achieved what I set out for it to do. And I guess the big question is, do I want to invest time and money in doing that again? And do I need to do that again? Or is my time served better doing something else to enable acknowledgement in a different way, maybe, So I don't actually know the answer to that question. We're asked, honestly, every month to open a restaurant in Melbourne and Sydney, without fail, by different people who want to back it and pay for it and all the rest of it. Now's definitely not the time to be opening a restaurant, in my opinion. And so I don't know is the bottom line answer to that. Sorry.
Your story obviously intersects with a lot of other people's, from your parents to Mark P.R. White, and you even have a very brief encounter with Madonna. Did you go through a process of getting everyone's blessing to be put on the page, or did you have to change a lot of names to protect the innocent/guilty?
There was a few name changes in there. The book was illegal for a long time, and there was a lot of stuff got taken out of it to protect the innocent, protect the guilty, and etc., which is just the way legals work. I had no idea how that was going to work. As I say, I just had everything. I had everything kind of out there, written down, and then when we got the legal team together, it was certainly a moment where they were like, "You cannot write that. This can't go in the book." Like, period. There's no amount of changing names or whatever can go in this to make it okay. So yeah, there was some stuff in there that didn't make it, to be honest. And as I said in the beginning, there was so many stories and funny stories. I mean, there's a lot of funny stories in the book. Madonna's story, I'll keep that for anyone who hasn't read it yet. But things like that throughout the book that are funny now that weren't so funny at the time. So it's not all tragic.
We've got a question here from Christine. She says, Mackenzie, aged 8, would like to know if you have any tips on how to make a book.
How to make a book? Mackenzie. I had a lot of help, Mackenzie. Had a lot of help. If you want to write a book, the first thing you need to do is the subject that you're writing about needs to be something that you either know very, very well or that you love. So, that could be your pet dog. It could be your love of food, of pasta, of lasagna. I could write a book about lasagna because I love it, So I think there needs to be a subject matter that you're either very, very knowledgeable about, like your life, in my case, in the memoir, or or something, like I say, that you really, really love. And then it's a case of sitting down and writing the things that you experience when you are either eating, like in the case of lasagna, when you're eating it. What are you need to use your words to describe what you're feeling, what was happening around you at the time, because that's what people find interesting. They want to know everything that surrounded that moment for you when you were eating lasagna. What all your senses were pinging. Was the aroma tomato-y, or was it garlicky, or who were you sharing it with? What was the conversation at the table? That sort of stuff. And so the more information that you can pack around whatever your subject matter is, and the more detail you have in it, the more interesting it will be. And I think that's about all I can give you and advice about it. And get a good publisher. Simon Schuster, fantastic.
Speaking of Simon & Schuster, they did just comment that they would buy the book about lasagna right now. So, done. So you were obviously driven from a very young age by an obsession with food, and it commenced quite young. You talk about attempting to cook your first proper meal at the age of 6. And you talk about going on holiday with your parents as a child and demanding that they buy you kind of street food that they themselves weren't going to touch. And at that age, most kids are kind of in the I'm only going to eat chicken nuggets and chips kind of phase. What do you think made you different?
I don't know. If you speak to my mum, she'll tell you that they used to have this thing at school, primary school. We used to come in the morning and you had to write your diary. They had this daily diary and you had to write what you did the night before after school, So everyone was writing. They played football, they went out and rode their bike, or, went for a walk, or with their grandparents, or whatever. And Mum said that all of my diary books from primary school were all full of foods, like what we ate the night before, or what Mum cooked or Nonna cooked or whatever. And so there was always this food related thing going on with me anyway. So there was an early interest there for whatever reason. And I think we've got two sides to our family. One half's Scottish. Mum's side of the family are all Scottish, and dad's side of the family are all Italian. And so we had two very different cultures in our family landscape, you know. And so going to Nana and Grandpa's house, the Scottish side, you'd have, you know, brown mince, boiled potatoes, maybe some, you know, some mashed up turnips. You know, it was all very stoic and farming and nice, you know, nothing wrong with it, but very, very down to earth, very, you know, even to look at, very plain, you know. And then you go to the Italian side of our family and you've got a big long table with, you know, salamis and cheeses and focaccia bread and, you know, 3 different pasta dishes, and everyone's yelling and shouting and arms waving and pasta sauce up the walls. You know what I mean? And so as a kid, I was more attracted to that than anything, because it was lively and invigorating, and, you know, there was some life about it, it seemed to me as a kid. And so I don't know, you know, if I was any different than any other kid or not, or I was just naturally, it was the most interesting thing that was going on for me as a kid. Maybe I don't know, but I was fascinated by food and people's reaction to food, and like salami I used to love salami. Like I used to look at salami like I wanted to marry it. Like it was just this amazing, delicious thing that I just couldn't eat enough of ever, you know, or, you know, going into, there was a delicatessen in Glasgow called Fadz's, and you'd walk in there and you'd smell briny olives and fresh focaccia coming out of the oven. And at Christmas time, they would have panettones, and you'd smell the panettone and the fruit in the panettone, you know, and prosciutto, salami, you know, those aromas, and that is life. You know, like food is life. And so, you know, when you're young and you're sort of exposed to that, I think it never leaves you, and you always crave it and look for it. And, you know, food is one of those things that brings people together, you know, through time, and I think always will. And so, you know, maybe it was the exposure to that when I was young that just made me get after it, you know?
Look, we won't keep you for too much longer. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to all of the questions that people have been posing. There's a lot. We've gotten a lot of questions about MasterChef, so I'm just going to pick one to ask you. And I think this is a nice broad one from Ronald.
Well, why don't you do some quick fire questions, and I'll cut my answers down shorter, and you can get through more of them. All
right, we'll do some quick fire questions. What is the experience like on MasterChef behind the scenes?
It's amazing. There is a total team of 200 people that make that show every day. 100 people in the edit sort of side and 100 people on set. And it is a team that is so tight and so experienced. And we as new judges were made to feel so welcome when we arrived. And I love it, is what I'll tell you. I love it. Behind the scenes, it is as good as it is what you see on the TV. It's amazing.
Can you tell everyone how real carbonara is made?
There's no cream, no garlic, and no white wine, right? And there's a recipe on my Instagram. Get on there and have a look at it, right? I don't want to hear about any garlic, cream, or white wine. Or mushrooms, I heard today as well, was another one. Stop it.
How do you know Jimmy Barnes?
We met. He was a customer. He came into the restaurant. We met. And you know, when you meet someone and you just click, and that was it. Him and I were like instant brothers. It was weird. Yes, we're both from Scotland. No, we're not actually brothers, even though we call each other brother. We're super tight, and we have such an amazing relationship. He's one of the most caring and kind men that I have ever met in my life. I love him.
And he wrote an amazing introduction to your book, and he is such a well-regarded memoirist. What was the feeling when you saw what he'd written about your story?
I cried, of course. Like, I'm a big softie anyway, and I read it and I was bawling my eyes out, and I was just like, oh, you know, I didn't want. He was the only person I wanted to write the foreword, to be honest, because he knows me so well, and he knows where I come from. He's walked those streets. He understands it, and he understands what it's like. And so, and he's gone through the similar patterns in his life of addiction and trying to tear your life down and destroy yourself, like self-sabotaging yourself to the point of, you know, blowing your life up. So, you know, anyway, I read it and I was in tears. In short, there you go. Sorry.
How many kilts in your kilt collection?
5 currently.
Have you ever been to Tasmania?
Yes. I've been twice, and we had planned to go for a month in the in-between during filming, and because of COVID, we haven't been able to go. But as soon as COVID lifts, we are in Tasmania for a month. Can't wait.
What do you hope readers will take away from Last Shot?
I hope they're inspired. I hope they, if there's something in there that resonates and makes someone sort of think about their life or the life of someone around them that might be struggling, or, you know, there's so many bits in there about, you know, whether it's about, you know, people trolling and bullying, or unjustness or unfairness, or addiction or overcoming addiction, or you know, this notion that obsession might be as harmful as an addiction. You know, my food obsession probably left more carnage in the wake of my life than addiction ever did. You know, and finding that work-life balance. And if you follow the book and the journey that I've gone through to arrive where I am today in a place of happiness, there's a lesson to be learned in there, I think, as well, you know. One of the things I told when I went to an Indigenous community for the very first time was an elder on country in APY land said to me, no matter what you do in your life, whether it's here or somewhere else or wherever you go, give back more than you take. And that's something that I have, you know, used as a beacon, you know, like a lighthouse, you know. Is that what you call them, lighthouse? What are they called? And then when you're in the ocean, it's a lighthouse, isn't it? A lighthouse? Yeah. It's that for me is like something where I constantly check in on, whether it's my kids' time. If I'm spending an hour with my kids, I want to give them more than I get. Do you know what I mean? If it's a business, if it's someone I'm mentoring, it doesn't matter. And I think you can use that as a real guiding light in your life. And it was given to me by an elder in APY lands, and I've stuck by it for 20 years, and it served me well.
Let's do 2 more quick questions.
Go on then.
If you could eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Cacio e pepe.
And 2, you signed a bunch of books for us, and you made a special offer in one of those books for somebody to get in touch with you and get a set of your worry beads. Has that offer been redeemed yet?
No, which I can't believe.
So that means that the book may still be out there. If you've received a signed copy, check the signature, because there could be an offer in there, or order the book right now at booktopia.com.au. We still have signed copies.
I wrote in the front of it to turn to a specific page, and I put my email address in there, and I said, email me what it says on that page, and then you'll get a set of Kayam worry beads. And I think, you know, we launched the worry bead site because there was so many people got in touch and said, hey, like, you've got all these different worry beads, all the different colors, you know, what is going on, where do you buy them from? And the truth of the matter is, embarrassingly, I make every single one of them. And it's just something that I have come to love and enjoy doing, is sourcing semi-precious beads from around the world and making these worry beads, and they've got hand-carved skulls on them, and they're beautiful. Very time-consuming to make and source and design, but I love them. And so I thought, look, let's give a set away and a signed copy of the book. And so, yeah, I slipped it in with the thousands of copies of books that I signed for you guys. So somewhere in there, there is a signed copy that states, if you email me with the right inscription of what is in a certain page, you will get a free set of those worry beads, which are worth $500.
Fantastic.
Good gift.
Absolutely. Well, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Jock. We really appreciate you talking to us.
Thank you.
And if you would like to order a copy of Last Shot, here it is. You can do so right now at booktopia.com.au.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a great chat. And thanks to everybody who logged in. Thanks for all your questions. I wish I could stay on and answer them all, to be honest. Great.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Night.
Thanks.